can anyone like Anupar, so can you call Anita and help her to join? Because I don't think anybody is having trouble joining, right? Any of you? We do have 24 people already there. She might not be using, yeah. So thanks. Let's wait for a, let's wait. Yeah, I still see people joining, so I think maybe we can wait for a minute. Should we start now then? What do you think?
I think we should start. Sorry
Yes,
for
we can start. Yeah, because we probably will lose time. Okay. So see, are you going to
Okay.
start?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to have everybody here for another session where we're going to discuss parenting. And, you know, the topic of this parenting discussion is things my mother never told me. This is a great topic because I think one of the things of those of us who are parents who have children in different phases of life realize that there are a lot of things that we're facing now that perhaps our parents didn't even have to face when they were raising us as their children. There's been an evolution of what's been occurring in the past. At the same side, there are a lot of things that have stayed the same. So there are some things that have been passing down from generation to generation. In looking at this discussion, I hope what we get out of this is some guidelines on how to help, what we can do to look forward to some of the different stages in development, but also to realize, I think, that we've all been there. At some point, we've all been there with our children and how they behave and what they do, and that sort of roller coaster that happens with all of this. So I think I would like to introduce our two speakers. We have Dr. Rajashree Mohanty and we have Dr. Tusita Manalil. We're going to start off with Dr. Mohanty. She's going to give a little bit of a presentation and they're going to break it up so that it's divided between different ages and some of the expectations that can occur. So I'll hand this over to Dr. Mohanty.
Namaskar. It's my pleasure and joy to be here on behalf of OSA Women's Empowerment Team to bring you some highlights on parenting. Thankful to OSA for OSA Convention 2021 for giving us this platform to bring this important topic. Challenges of parenting are overwhelming for our current generations, while they juggle working outside and inside home at the same time struggled with raising their children. They deal with issues now that probably their parents and grandparents never had to deal with. This is my modest attempt to help them make their life a little easier and parenting more fun.
I'm not able to see.
Planning parenthood should be a decision. Sorry, 1 second.
I'm sorry.
Start it?
Advance, no. Go to advance.
I'm sorry.
Go to screen. Hit share.
There you go.
Okay.
Got it?
Yes.
That works.
Okay. Planning parenthood should always be a joint decision of a couple, solely yours, without pressure from elsewhere. Women do need to take into consideration their ticking body clock while planning for well-being of their unborn child. Pregnancy does involve physical and mental changes of a woman. Complete spousal involvement and support can make that journey pleasant and fulfilling. Educating yourself of what to expect under the supervision of your obstetrician will allay a lot of anxiety. Preparing for the arrival of the baby needn't be talked about thanks to the galore information available online. Once the baby arrives, adjusting to the new routine can be very challenging for the new parents. But please, please practice self-compassion and pamper yourselves, because most certainly you're doing a good job. Rest when your baby does, and take advantages of your grandparents and friends who are willing to help, so you and your spouse can enjoy and do stuff. Be mindful of postpartum depression and get professional help if it interferes with your daily life. Moving on. Even though breastfeeding is the best form of nutrition, carry no element or guilt if you ever have to supplement with formula. Colic or fussy infants can be a big problem for new moms. But believe me, the treatment or no treatment, it does pass in 3 to 4 months. Unfortunately, the cause is not known. Putting your baby to sleep, back to sleep. We don't put the babies on their bellies anymore. Avoid excessive bed linen. And these are precautions that one takes to avoid this horrible thing called sudden infant death. Read and sing to your baby. Environmental stimulation during your baby's awake hours is vitally important for the development. Make sure smartphones and media do not steal any time from your baby. Be mindful of the normal milestones in order to detect developmental delays, most of which can be dealt with early intervention. Your pediatrician can provide age-appropriate milestones, and they're also available online. Moving on to your teens. Teenage is a difficult time when they're struggling with body changes, mood swings, confusions about right and wrong as perceived by them, their parents, teachers, and friends. Their biggest challenge is trying to fit in. Some activities that can help are participation in group sports, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and age-appropriate volunteering. Defiance of authority and struggle for independence is a part of a teenager, and we can't deny it. Talk to your teens as you would want them to talk to you. Raising voices to make a point is highly ineffective. It only reinforces similar behavior in your teens. In the heat of the moment, time out for both parent and teen works better. I'm sure a lot of you will vouch for that. Give them choices of chores and get them involved in your family affairs. Pick up your room or vacuum the whole house. Chances are they'll pick up the former. Meal times can be challenging when your teen refuses to eat and you have cooked. Get them involved in the meal planning and simple cooking so that they realize meals don't appear miraculously on the table. Media time, curfew, and safety. Create your own family media plan, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. Safety should be discussed at length. Mobile charging in a common area and not in their bedrooms will prevent teenage insomnia. By the way, it's certainly on the rise. Consistency in disciplining of both parents is the key. When dealing with their academic performance, a single bad grade should not be treated as a catastrophe. Rather, teach them to look at that in the growth mindset for improvement next time. Pick extracurricular activities, keeping their strengths and weaknesses, likes and dislikes in mind. It should be an enjoyable experience and not a chore. Gender bias. Gender bias in parenting is not a major issue like how it used to be. We are not going to raise our girls to be princesses, but to be bold, resilient, so they can stand up for their rights and not settle for anything less than their male counterparts. Our boys will grow up to respect and care for the opposite sex. Their first example, of course, is at home, how their parents teach each other. So here you go. You have to set an example for your children. Last but not the least, a few words on LGBTQ. Those of you who don't know what that stands for, it actually stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning. It is important for parents to realize every child is unique and will have their own experience, feelings along the way. The only thing they can do is to assure those children unconditional love and respect of their sexual orientation and total acceptance. Families and friends of these parents need to be supportive and accept them as they are. If there is a need, do not hesitate to get professional help for you and your child to deal with turmoil. Above all, we need to look past the perfect family model that we are used to, where the parents are financially and professionally successful and their children are Ivy League graduates. There is a whole world out there with unlimited possibilities that our children can explore. Moving on to your young adults. As your high school grad heads to college, rest assured, they need you as much as you miss them. After all the trials and tribulations, agreements and disagreements, decisions, hopefully combined, has been made about college and courses. While you're worrying about tuition and career choices, your freshman is thinking how he's going to fit in, how he or she is going to fit in, who's going to be their roommate, how he or she is going to make it without all the help they got at home, even without asking. Motto: to make them responsible and independent as much as possible before they head out. Health check and recommended immunizations are a must in a campus life. Communicate with the children regularly without going into gory details of their campus life. They talk, we listen. Living off an allowance is a great idea. It will also teach them distinguishing needs and wants. If your freshman is athletically inclined, be supportive. A great way to fit in and make friends. If a poor academic pattern persists, then the situation should be carefully evaluated by the freshman, parents, and teachers, and make the necessary changes to help this child succeed. Your freshmen will certainly seek social life. That is perfectly normal. They need to pick happy medium between academics and social life. Guide them so none of them come with a bad outcome. Lastly, a few words on instilling gratitude, love, and compassion. Our affluence and our indulgence sometimes makes us shower our children with presents, substituting for our presence sometimes. We need to be careful not to send confusing messages to our children and they start taking us for granted. Most of us who grew up in joint families, sharing came to us naturally. Now, with small families, it is a skill that needs to be instilled in your children very young in life. Every freshman that picks an out-of-state college needs to realize sacrifices parents make to send them there. Everything that's being handed out to them comes with a price tag that parents pick up. Sometimes they can afford, sometimes they can't. Children need to realize that as much as possible, the sacrifices that the parents make to get them in the right track. Volunteering is a great way of getting children and young adults look beyond their comfort zone at others who are less fortunate. Computer-savvy children and young adults can easily explore zillions of volunteering opportunities available during college and school breaks, and I'm sure they will find something that interests them. We as parents have to be actively involved in setting examples. Our goal should be to raise a caring and compassionate human being, in addition to seeing him succeed professionally. These qualities are welcome no matter which field or wherever they go, and that will be the icing on their success cake. For most part, we've done a good job securing our children's future. Let's not forget to support those amidst our friends and family who haven't been so fortunate. With the time constraints, I have to admit this is only the tip of the iceberg of the vast field of parenting. We will be following up with similar important topics. Our future seminars, please stay tuned. Before closing, I wanted to acknowledge an active member of our WHE group, Dr. Tapasya Panda, who has been a messiah, along with many other benevolent folks, for remote Orissa during this pandemic, reaching out to them in so many different ways. The latest one being supplying oxygen concentrators to through her project, Breathe India. Kudos to Dr. Panda. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. You know, and as you said, this is just the beginning in a series of seminars that we will be doing on parenting. And I think you touched upon it very quickly here, but I wanted to pose a great question that I think is actually on a lot of parents' minds, and definitely on a lot of Odia parents' minds for sure. Me being an Odia parent with a child who's going to go into high school, this has been on my mind. So I'd like to ask you this question. Kids feel that the Odia parents are concerned about their standing in society, about impressing their Odia friends, versus really understanding what that child needs and what is it important for them to get into like an Ivy Leagues, into a certain Ivy League school. How would you approach that struggle that parents and children are facing?
No, I feel the parents should think the child is the first priority. It doesn't matter who thinks what or if they make it to the school. They need to look at the child and what the child's needs are and what he's capable of. So there is no room for competition in a child's life. When suppose he's not able to succeed in certain areas, you can't push that kid to go to Ivy League school and then not be happy there. So I think the parents really need to look at their children very carefully, right from the beginning when they're young, to see their strengths and weaknesses and gear them in the right direction.
I agree. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, I did get into a couple of Ivy League colleges, didn't go to an Ivy League college, and I'm extremely happy with the path that I chose. And it was done through the guidance of my parents. So I have them to thank for that. But let's move on to the next part. So next, we're going to touch upon with what Dr. Are the slides on there? Yes. So Dr. Tapasri Mayanil, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly, has to present further on parenting as well.
Dr. Tushita Mayanel, that's her name.
So sorry.
Yeah.
I can't read. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, her name is here.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
All right, just checking to make sure the audio and video is working. Sounds okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is lovely. Thank you, Susie. And Dr. Mohanty, this has been lovely. I really appreciate you sharing these words of wisdom from your personal experience and also from your professional experience. This is an amazing, you definitely will be receiving phone calls from me when my children are teenagers very soon. My name is Dr. Tushita Mayanil. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm also a faculty member at University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. I am speaking from professional experience. I'm a psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and also from a personal standpoint, I'm a mother of 3 children, 10 and under. Dr. Mohanty spoke about the little ones, the neonates, the babies, and I'm going to talk a little bit about preschoolers and elementary school age children. They are so much fun. They have so much energy. They have so much joy. There's like an explosion of brain cells. They have all this physical, mental energy, so much physical growth, so many lovely milestones, running, kind of catching ball, riding tricycle, climbing, sliding, playgrounds. I'm sure all of you seasoned parents have kind of chased your children up and down the playground. A lot of different motor milestones, fine motor milestones that you might have witnessed. One of the big ones is obviously the educational ones, which is writing and feeding self. It is a big change from them being little babies. So this is what's going on in the exterior. What's going on in the interior? How are they thinking? So preschool, the biggest thing that I hear in my office, and also when I talk to a lot of parents in my friend circle, is they cannot share. So, and this is obviously one of the biggest concerns that parents come in with. He or she has a hard time sharing. So children between the ages of 1 to 5 and 6 are still developing something called theory of mind, which essentially means that they're very self-centered. It's not a bad thing at all. It's completely developmentally appropriate. They're very self-centered, and it's called being egocentric, meaning everything revolves around them. This combined with the explosion of language and words, they come across as little adults, but really they're not there. They're also not little adults because they are in their own zone and developing. They are still very symbolic in how they think, right? And their logic isn't obviously like us, right? Because it was raining and a blue truck passed by. Every time a blue truck passes by, it will rain. They make associations with their language, and that's how they remember and learn. They don't have what we call abstract thinking. So abstract thinking is something that comes later in your childhood, maybe around 11 or 12 years of age, where you're able to think beyond the situation, we call big picture thinking. They have a hard time doing that. So reasoning with your child is impossible, as you have probably encountered in your own experience. All right, what else is going on in their life in the preschool age? Toilet training, of course. This might go very beautifully, and sometimes not so much. It's important to remember that children have to be physically ready, which means motor-wise, like how strong they are, whether they can climb on the potty, they can get up, they can pull down their clothes, pull it back up, and of course they have to be ready for that. Sensory-wise, they have to understand their body's signals and be able to perceive their fullness and be able to use the bathroom appropriately. sometimes it's really not about motor or sensory issues. It's about control, as you might have encountered in this age group. Children in this age, as I told you, they are very self-centered and egocentric, so it has to be their idea. It cannot be mom's and dad's idea to potty train them. You can gently encourage them and guide them, but they truly have to be ready for it in their head. Mr. Rogers, I'm from Pittsburgh, so have to share Mr. Rogers' picture. He was all about play. And one of the big things about play is it's talked about as if it is, this is a lovely quote. It's often talked about as if it's a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood. That is all they have to do in their childhood, is to play. It is immensely important for a child's development, is to play. So if you see a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old sitting down and working on Kumon and worksheets, you know it's not going anywhere. All right, so this is the hard part. So how do I play with my child, right? A lot of people, some people find it to be very joyful to be playing with their children. A lot of people not so much. There are some science-based ways, believe it or not, scientists also study this quite a lot in depth. There are scientific ways of playing with your children. And one of the big ways is, so for the little ones, it's called serve and return technique. And I'll put the link in there. This is for usually babies and toddlers. And there's something called child-directed play. This is most appropriate for children between the ages of 2 and 6 and 7. So the biggest thing with any play that you have with a child is it truly has to be their idea. As long as it's not destructive play, there are no rules to the game. Of course, it's a little bit different that children are getting older and they're playing board games and stuff. That gets to be a little bit different. So your job when you're playing with your 3-year-old or 4-year-old is think of yourself as a radio announcer, right? Or a sports broadcaster. So you're essentially announcing everything that they are doing and essentially making comments on it. Do not ask questions, don't direct their play, don't give them ideas. It has to be a very joyful mutual experience. As I said, there are no rules to this. So if Legos and magnet tiles are put together instead of building what the set says, it's completely okay. When you're playing with them, talk about, do not ask questions as to like, okay, please, how about you put the blue truck on the red Lego? It doesn't go anywhere because they in their head they have their own ideas. You might suggest it. I wonder what the blue truck might think when it sits on the red Lego. I wonder if it's going to be happy or sad. So let them take the lead in the play. All right, discipline. It's always a battle of wits with the discipline, right? Who's going to be the boss? And a lot of our children are boss babies. So the reference is a little bit, some of you may or may not have seen the movie. It's a fun movie. Actually, there's another one that's come up now. The biggest thing about discipline is catch them being good. I cannot emphasize this enough. It is very important to model behaviors and identify emotions. For children to be able to kind of be able to walk out and I guess to be able to take timeouts, they have to be able to recognize that they need a timeout. And the only way for them to recognize is parents are able to recognize it themselves. So if you're feeling frustrated or if you're feeling sad, say something like, mommy or daddy is feeling really sad right now. I really need to walk away. Or the biggest thing with any behavioral principle is if any behavior, positive or negative, you give it attention, it leads to more behavior. So pick your battle here. If the goal is to essentially shower so much positive attention that the negative behavior extinguishes. And if the negative behavior does happen, the biggest thing that you do is something called planned ignoring, which is essentially ignore, do not look at them, do not talk to them, do not make eye contact when the negative behavior is happening. I do remember one of my attending supervisors when I was training actually kicked a trash can when he was displaying planned ignoring for negative behavior. And we were shocked because of course, like you wouldn't do that. Like he was behaving like he was a child and we were parents and we had to essentially ignore that behavior too. And all of these principles work. They have been scientifically proven to work. timeout. Biggest misconception is it's a punishment. It is truly not a punishment. As Dr. Mohanty was saying, we use timeout for older teenagers too. It is truly a timeout from attention and from the situation. So it is not a punishment. When the child is in timeout, make sure they have a designated chair, space, corner, which is safe. Do not look at the child, do not talk to the child, do not touch the child. And the duration of the timeout has to be based on age. Stay consistent, mom, dad, grandparents. Now this is the hardest part. Timeouts absolutely do work. The tricky part is staying consistent with them every single time, even if it is everyone's tired and no one wants to do this, but you absolutely have to. If you give up even once or twice, it is not going to work. Alrighty, just a few examples of how to talk to your child and how to give quote unquote commands to your child. Instead of asking a question, so you don't want to leave them an option, right? Will you hand me the block? Please use your manners and say, please hand me the block. Please hand me the block. So instead of asking them a command to like tell them what not to do, tell them what to do. So stop running around, stop yelling. So it says, please hold my hand, or say, please use your indoor voice. You can also make a joke out of it, like I sometimes do with my children, and sometimes works. Is like, my ears are hurting so much. I wonder if you can use your gentle voice for me. So make it into a positive statement. Do not yell across the room, never works. Come close, come to their eye level and make eye contact when you're talking to them. It is going to be a lot of work, but believe me, it does work. All right, a little bit of elementary school age. They're obviously their own people. They're starting to get independent. So you want to utilize them and give more responsibilities and make them feel a little bit more self-sufficient. Obviously, their intelligence is exploding. They have all these different interests, sports, extracurricular activities, arts. Let them pick what they want to do. Do not overwhelm them. It has to be a fun experience, as Dr. Mohanty said. It also has to be what they are aligned to do. Something else is at this point, friendships and friends become a little bit more important than family life, and it is lovely to see them kind of become their own people at this age. Let them cultivate as many friendships. Encourage them to have non-Indian friends. I think this is something that I see a lot of Indian communities is they either tend to like stick around too much within Indian communities, or they have no connection with the community. You have to find what works best for your family and kind of find a mix of people who are from your background and people who look nothing or do nothing like you. Just a few more things. It is important to have rules just across all ages, and please follow them, mom and dad. I cannot, children, as you know, are very smart and they know how to find loopholes and also use one parent against the other. Media plans are very important. If you would like, American Academy of Pediatrics has a very nice media plan on their website. And I give it to a lot of my patients and families who come to them, and they love it. It is very important to know who their families are, who the families of the children they're socializing with. As I said, let them expand their social circles, make family time fun. Not everything has to be educational and not everything has to be academic. Model good behavior. If you want your child to learn to read 30 minutes before bed, please read 30 minutes before bed. If you are looking at Netflix, they will also want to look at Netflix before bedtime. It is very important to praise the effort, not the accomplishment. For example, I really like how you sat down and focused for the last hour on your math assignment instead of saying, great job on getting an A+ on something. So it's very important to praise the effort, not so much the accomplishment, because the accomplishments come and go. The grades might change from A+ to A, B-, B, whatever, but you really want to make a big deal about the effort they're putting in. And something else you may or may not be doing is talking about their body. Please don't use nicknames for body parts. Call them what they are for boys and girls. It is really important for them to respect their private parts as much as they respect their fingers and elbows and toes. And there's no shame there. And it is important for moms to be able to talk to sons and dads to be able to talk to daughters about their growth and development. Thank you.
Wow, that was very informative. Thank you. So we have a couple of questions, if I could direct those to you. So in Odia households, which isn't too unfamiliar with just the general households, mental health issues are sometimes considered taboo. And parents may have a hard time assessing or thinking about mental health for their children, and may decide to redirect their focus on other things for their child, such as school or academics. How would you guide a parent in trying to get a balance when it comes to that?
Dr. Mohanty, do you want to field that?
Yeah, can you repeat one more time the question? I didn't get that.
Sure. So mental health is a taboo in a lot of households, and in Odia households included. And parents may think that their child might have a mental health issue, or they may not recognize it, and they might try to redirect their focus on other things like the school or academics. How do you think a parent might want to go about or navigate the potential of a mental health issue that they need to bring up, whether it's for them to accept it as a parent or the child to understand it as a child?
I think the first step is to discuss with the pediatricians in their regular checkups. When they go in, if there is any mental issue, they need to be open about it, at least with the pediatrician. And depending on the gravity of the situation, the pediatrician can decide whether they need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whoever can decide. And help at the early stage is often better than to wait till things get out of hand.
Excellent.
And really the taboo should, by now, it should be gone. I feel sad that it's still there and people look at psychiatric care or psychologist care as something that's not out of this. Actually, in most households, and we really need to come out of it.
I agree.
I truly appreciate that, Dr. Mohanty. There's still a lot of taboo to psychiatric care, and a great place to start would actually the pediatrician's office. As you said, pediatricians know your families really well. They see multiple siblings. Some family practitioners also see parents. So it's actually a great place to start. And depending on what the symptoms are or what's going on, they might be referred to more care. It is harder to find a psychiatrist to treat your child than you think. Truly, once you actually decide, it's going to take many months. So you really want to jump on that wagon early. Pediatricians can treat kind of more common conditions like anxiety, ADHD, kind of just more kind of state of life questions than psychiatrists do. Psychiatrists end up seeing a lot more sicker children. So pediatrician is a great place to start. Ask a lot of questions, do your own research. It is best to be informed. Talk to other families. There are many forums, there are many websites based kind of focusing on certain disorders, ADHD, anxiety, depression being the common ones. Talk to the teachers, talk to the guidance counselor. These are people who are on your team. So you definitely don't want to make it them versus them against us. It's all the same team. They're on your child's team.
So go ahead.
I think it's such a teamwork. Parents, teachers, counselors all have to be on the same page. So open up and talk about it, and then you will get the help you need.
So going along those lines, another question here is, how do you know if your child has depression?
I think the common things that you see in a child when they have depression is withdrawing. They tend to stay in their rooms more and don't take interest in the common things that they used to be interested in. Sometimes there is some the loss of appetite and not eating well and not sleeping well. These are all signs, that are red flags.
I would just like to add that in children, instead of sadness of mood, there's a lot of irritability. So if you notice that your child is more irritable, withdrawing more, not as interested in things, it's just not as motivated, just looks very kind of like not energetic, right? Like this is your child 6 months ago, they would be interested in seeing this or going out to movies or want to go to lacrosse practice, and they don't want to do that anymore, or they have to be like really dragged out of the door. Talk to them what's going on. It's important not to problem solve for them. That is our first instinct and job as a parent, is to fix their problem. Try not to do that. It is important to let them just feel like they can talk to you without you problem solving and jumping on the problem right away, because sometimes they don't even want you to problem solve. They just want you to listen to them. And then I think Dr. Shekhar asked a question, can you please elaborate the issue of moms constantly comparing their children? It is, your child is your child, physically, mentally, psychologically, societally. It is like comparing apples and oranges. And I'm sure all of us have been compared to our own siblings, and it was extremely hard for us even then to deal with that. It's just important to remember that your child is unique in their own sets of skills, strengths, and weaknesses. So it's unfair for them. It's very hurtful for the child. I'll let Dr. Mohanty comment further.
I think one important thing that most parents need to remember, if you have more than one child, not to compare them, because they all come with their own blueprints. They're your children, but they are all different. Even if you give them the same values, they turn out to be different. So you need to accept that and try not to compare a child that's doing very well academically for someone who's not doing. The one that's not doing well in academically might be excelling in something else. You need to find those skills in your children and support them.
Correct.
I think we give a lot of importance to academics, forgetting that some of these kids have other special skills that should be promoted.
And what is your thoughts on one comment made was perhaps if your child may not feel comfortable talking to you about whatever struggle they may be going through, that you allow them to just go directly to the pediatrician and say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on with my son or daughter. Can you talk with them and see what's happening?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. If you trust your pediatrician, most of the parents know the pediatricians very well. So I think that's perfectly fine. If I've done that with my teenagers. Sometimes they don't talk in front of their parents, but I take them aside and they open up. So that's absolutely fine.
Okay. Another question that is actually unfortunately coming up more and more in today's age with our children at a very young age, unfortunately, is vaping. We've seen it in the teenagers, but we've seen it in even younger kids, unfortunately. Any thoughts on that and how to approach that with kids? Because there is a notion that vaping is not smoking and vaping is safe and vaping does not carry this, that, and the other thing. So it's good, so.
I belong to the old school. I do not recommend vaping at all.
I agree. I was not encouraging it. I was just saying that's what people say.
But I really belong to the old school, so I wouldn't be able to comment a lot on that, but I don't approve it. But you, Tushita, you can take it up.
I completely agree. It's definitely not less dangerous. If not more, it is equally dangerous. You've got a lot of nicotine in your system. There are a lot of contaminants in there. The only thing that you don't get is the smoke or the hydrocarbons, but it doesn't kind of make up for everything else that is being put in your system. Something else you might also know, that you might think your child is vaping and it's nicotine. Well, it's better than cigarettes. A lot of times children are also using something called CBD oil, which is essentially looks like nicotine, and it comes in those little cartridges, and you wouldn't even know what's a nicotine vape and what's a Juul. So it is again, it's important for them to be able to trust you when this is an issue, and it might start as an experimental usage, and it happens, and I wouldn't even say high school, middle school at this point. A lot of 7th, 8th, it's as scary as it might seem, a lot of 6th, 7th, 8th graders have used alcohol and nicotine. So it is important to keep that communication open.
Sorry.
For the parents, we should open up our homes to our children's friends. We don't do that often. If your home is the meeting place, you can keep them safe. So I have done that with my boys. My home used to, at one point they were taken over by their friends, but I'm glad I did that. So it's, I think we need to open up, and some intercultural meeting also is important. They only don't have to meet their Indian or Oriya friends. They can bring their non-Indian friends home too. And don't be judgmental about their friends' clothes and their how they dress or how they talk and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's important that we participate in that. I don't think our Oriya parents or Indian parents do that enough.
And I think our children, when they start to experiment and look at different things, whether it's vaping or something else, part of it is intrigue, but part of it is because so-and-so is doing it next door. Okay. And there are other ways to encourage being cool or being liked or being popular or whatever the notion is that they're trying to fit into. Let's see, I have another question here. You know, there's a lot of support when it comes to dealing with how as a society do we support people who have mentally and physically disabled children? Where's the support? How can we try to gather some support for the parents and the children that are requiring that?
Actually, I have a lot of interest in dealing with special needs children. And one thing I need to say is that those parents need to build their own support group. When you're invited to a party, kids can be ruthless. And they are children who are not disabled, and then a disabled child comes in. Often they will belittle them or make fun of them. And it's very hard for the parent. I had one of my friends who was an autistic 18-year-old. She had gone to a party, and then the other parents were telling, why is this kid here? He is mad. He should not be here with our kids. After that, she never, ever went to another gathering. So, you know, those kind of things really hurt my feelings. You have to have a support group for the people who have disabled children. That way, at least they can meet on their own, and the kids are different. They are not mad, or they're not nothing of that sort. They're just different. So unless they have their own support group, it will be very difficult for them to mingle with the general crowd.
Also, I would like to add on the other side, people who are blessed to have children, so-called normal children, everyone has special needs, and everybody. It's really important to help them empathize. They are exposed to children with special needs in school and preschool settings, and it is important to kind of keep talking about how everyone's different, everyone's family is different, and not everyone has to look and think like you. So it is very important for us to cultivate that empathy, also by example, right? We don't expect our kids to miraculously develop empathy if we use a tone of voice, or we have a kind of like a gesture when we talk about people who do not look or speak like us. So it is important to kind of cultivate that empathy early on. Looks like there are a couple more questions. How do you deal with young children doing things at different times, like starting to walk and starting to read? I think Dr. Mohanty, you should probably answer that, since you're with all these years as a pediatrician.
Is that a concern about the development, right? Yeah, that's, you know, yes. You have to be aware of the normal milestones of the baby, of the children, to be able to detect those. So when you go to see a pediatrician, most of the pediatricians have the chart, the milestone chart. So if they can know what is normal, then only they'll find out what is abnormal, right? So it's important to educate yourself what the normal milestones are, and then only you can pick it up. So education is a big thing for the parents.
So now there's a question here about adult children. So if you have children who are adult children, and you may feel that they're struggling, that they're having a difficult time relating, and maybe either you as a parent or the child themselves don't know how to deal with it, how can you approach that? Do you have any guidelines on that?
Say they're having trouble fitting in?
Or maybe they're just not, whether it's fitting in, not being, maybe the adult child can't figure out that they're having a hard time with something, whatever that something is. How do you as a parent, or how do you guide yourself, or how do you guide the child to try to figure out how to help that adult child?
I think we'll need to know a little bit. The question is very unspecific. We need to be a little bit more specific exactly what kind of problem the kid's having. So
if it's a mental health struggle, or like, is it something else? Like, is it like a relationship issue? I think the advice might need to be tailored to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see if that gets clarified. So going back a little bit to what Dr. Mohanty was saying a little bit, secrets about how do you know what is normal developmentally? How do you know when to worry?
If actually there is a 2 standard deviation, if a not 2 standard deviation of the milestone, if you look at the chart, suppose at a certain age, the kid's supposed to be doing something and it's not, there's 2 standard deviations, then that's a matter of concern.
So there's always a range.
Yeah.
There's always a range for doing everything, and your pediatrician will assess based on where you are developmentally. If you are generally falling behind in just one area versus this is like a global development. So I think it's important to kind of keep an eye on that. It's important to kind of keep an eye on those things without getting too worried, because there are early interventions for most developmental delays, and the earlier you get it, the better it is. If, for example, if you have a speech delay and you have other issues, you're worried about autism or anything else, you'd be surprised at how much early intervention before the age of 5 can kind of, quote unquote, kind of almost bring your child to a good growth and developmental trajectory. So the earlier the better. Be the squeaky wheel who gets the grease. That's okay. Keep bringing in the pediatricians. It might sound a little annoyed if you keep bringing up things, but it's okay. It's your child. Keep bringing them the concern if you're worried.
I think in your routine visits, when they're with the pediatrician, it's really important that you bring every concern to their attention. And often, when the present day, you have 15 minutes to evaluate the child. If you're working for a corporation, you get only 15 minutes to evaluate the child. And that's just not enough. So if the parents write their concerns down and bring it to the pediatrician's office, often the pediatrician will have a better chance of addressing every single issue. I always used to encourage my patients to write down their questions before they came to the office, so that we could save the time, at the same time address all their concerns.
Okay. Then let's say that one of the questions here is, you have a child who you think seems to have an interest in an activity such as music, for example, but when they're with the teacher or they're doing something, they seem to have no interest. How can you perhaps cultivate or guide them towards that need for use for interest, to develop that interest? So sorry about the noise.
It might be a goodness of fit. Sometimes it might be the teacher style, or it might be the structured session, which may or may not. So if this is like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old who loves to kind of just play with the piano or the keyboard, but they're not interested in like a formal session, they might be too young for that. They might not be developmentally ready, and give them another 6 months and they might be ready. And ask the teacher if they've had experience working with people who have struggled with engaging with a teacher or a structured music class. I have a lot of people with musical skills may or may not enjoy structured lessons early on in life, but if they truly are persistent, you might want to try a little bit later. Dr. Mohanty, did you have anything to add to that?
I think for these students, Montessori system would be very good, because they usually gear these kids according to their interest. And if you can afford a Montessori school, that would be my recommendation.
There's actually one more question about secrets. When children, Prachi has a question about secrets that she asked earlier, and she means secrets of being dishonest, avoiding answering truthfully, etc. I guess when they're trying to avoid, what do you do?
It's a tough one. I think the children hide because of the consequences. So it's all their past experiences with you as children, how you react to those things. If you have reacted badly, then they learn to avoid the consequences. So this kind of thing has to start very early in their life. If they're already in their teens or young adults, it's too late. They're not going to come and tell you now. So this is something that the parents of preschoolers and toddlers need to do. Even your body language tells them enough. If you don't say anything, your body language will tell them whether you like it or not. So you have to be careful. So I don't know how you would teach a young adult or teenager who wants to hide. You can have a talk with them and see if that will work, but it's too late, I think.
No, sometimes works. I have learned. You have to change the way you deal with them.
That's why it's important that you do positive parenting rather than negative parenting.
So another question is, how do you deal with a toddler who's got boredom? And I think we've all faced boredom despite being whatever age the child is, but toddler boredom, how do you cope with that? What can you do?
Get them out of the house.
So is it the toddler who's bored of what's going on, or are you bored with the toddler? Like what's the boredom stemming from?
Good question.
I think toddlers don't get to go out enough with the parents' schedule, with both parents working. I think the babysitter or whoever is watching the kid needs to take them out. The closer to the nature they are, the better kids will turn out. So I'll suggest get them outside.
Agree. And it's important for them to be bored, right? You don't have to you don't have to cater to every single minute of their life. Nothing has to be structured all the time. It is very important for them to think for themselves and not constantly follow the routine that you have, like whatever, 6 to 7, so class, 7 to 8, trampoline, blah, blah, blah. So it is very important for them to get bored, so they're able to entertain themselves with free play. Free play is exceedingly important in a toddler and preschool's development. So boredom is good.
So one other question we have, what are the different mistakes that parents may engage when trying to do a disciplinary action? So it's not the right way to do a disciplinary action for correcting a behavior.
You want to address that, or you want me to?
Sure, I can go. If you mean like hitting or spanking, I know our generation, most of us have had like some spanking or hitting when we were younger. It is scientifically, it doesn't work. You end up respecting your parents more out of fear than out of true respect. And hitting someone or hitting a child to teach them to share or not to do something ends up being, it just doesn't work. It's all wrong. You have to lead, but it is so much easier to spank them and send them to the room and where they'll kind of like cry and calm down on their own, versus like put in all the work to help them understand that this is not a right behavior. Parents have to be on the same page, so do grandparents. As I said, it's all about positive attention and really, really ignoring the negative behavior. Sometimes, for example, I'll give you an example of like bedtime. It's always hard. So make it a game between the children, right? Like let's say who can race me upstairs and change into their pajamas before the timer rings. or so it works for toddlers and preschoolers, and then for older kids you have to have good rules and plans for them to be able to get to a place by bedtime or be ready for school in time, not to miss the bus.
So I
Somebody-
think, go
I
ahead.
think somebody made an observation about like kids now have more things to engage but get bored so easily. True, very true, Prachi.
And I think one of the things, just on that notion of boredom, for brain development and brain rest, boredom is fantastic. It's absolutely necessary. We used to do with our children when they were very quiet, and you would take them to a party and they would sleep through the party when they're, infants. And we're like, oh, look at that. They're adjusting. They can do that. We were always looking at that when they were younger, but it's really important for them to continue and for me to continue with that. That sort of disconnect is very important for the brain. So absolutely agree with that. It's not boredom, it's brain health. I think those are the last of our questions. Are there any final comments that either one of our two speakers would like to say?
Oh, I do have a comment. We meet socially almost every weekend. But, the parties that I've gone to, I see there is nothing there to engage our children or the young teens and the young adults. So I would suggest when we want to include children in a party, have your teenager or a young adult plan some activities for them. So they're not constantly sitting with their iPad or the phone, and there is absolutely no interaction. So since we meet up, food is a big important part of our meeting. That's fine, but we need to pay attention to the other things also. How these kids will be. I remember when my son was 9-year-old, once I asked him, why don't you interact with adults? He told me, Mom, all they ask is how is school?
Mhm.
Who wants to talk about school all the time? Is that true? Is that true? When you look at a little kid or you just ask about school, you don't ask anything else. So that lit a bulb in my head. Every time I talk to my parents, I always make sure I tell them that. So it's important that, you engage them when they're in a party, they're doing something, or ask them to help. Whatever you want to do, get them engaged.
Absolutely. Even sometimes it can be imperative, but try not to use a phone or iPad as a babysitter. Start early when they're 1 and sitting in the grocery cart. Do not give them the phone, or try not to give them the phone, because it just tells them that if mom and dad are busy, I need something else to stay engaged, right? It's okay for them to get bored, as I said, and it's okay. You can talk to them, and you might look crazy talking about apples and bananas to a 1-year-old. It is great for their language development. Talk to them about color yellow, and don't ask them questions. Just keep commenting like a sportscaster or a broadcaster. Look at those fuzzy peaches. Look at the cabbage, whatever. So it's completely okay.
So on that line, one of the questions we just got was, is it good to provide video games? Sometimes the kids are asking, others are using their video games, can they use it? What would be the suggestion there?
Whether you like it or not, video games are to stay. And fortunately, unfortunately, they are mainstream of socialization for kind of the 10 to 16, 17-year-old boys and girls. And so it's hard to kind of pull that out, but it's really important to come up with ground rules even before you buy games or get your child involved with video games. It's important to kind of make sure that you are managing their outdoor time, school time, and not using video game as a reward, so to speak, right? If you do this, then it is really important to kind of structure it in the day.
I think video games are fine if there is parental guidance. Because some of them are not just appropriate for the age they're used at. So parents have to, draw the line what the kids can do and what they can't do. You have to be careful. There's a lot of violence in those games, and I don't know if anybody has done studies as to what this violence does to the kids in their later lives, but you have to be careful. It's your kid.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. That
you
was
know,
very informative.
So see, I think there is another program after this, so maybe we should be
Okay, I think we should be wrapping up.
okay, um, stopping it now. So see, did you have anything else to say, or should I?
No, I was just going to say, I think that this discussion will not end here.
No.
We'll continue with this. There's a lot of questions, and I think maybe for the next session, if people have specific questions, we can present them to the speakers ahead of time, because a lot of the questions that we do get do overlap a lot. So I think it's useful, and then we can try to give more, instead of speaking in generalities, maybe more specifics, depending on what the context is.
Yes, definitely.
This has been lovely. Thank you so much. And what a great group of people, and what a passionate group of people. Thank you very much.
And thanks to both of you. Okay, so just, I feel like a villain there. I know that you guys could go on and people have a lot of questions, but yeah, in the interest of time, we know that we are going to continue with these seminars with these two wonderful, these three doctors and many more. So dear all, yeah, hope you enjoyed the seminar. I'm sure you did. It was riveting, wasn't it? So my name is Parajita Mishra, and I'm part of this Women's Empowerment Forum. So I'll start by thanking our very efficient and able leader, Kuku, that's Mrs. Kuku Das. She imagined this forum, and so she provided a path forward for us for action. We have had many seminars, and we'll be having many more. So we thank Kuku for that. And for the seminar today, as you have all heard, we have had two wonderful speaker and moderator. I do thank Dr. Rajeshri Manti and Dr. Tushita Mayana, as well as Dr. Susi Mishra. We learned a lot from them. In fact, the audience became smarter and hopefully better parents in an hour worth. So we need much more, many more seminars like this. And we are also grateful for Debanshi Chaudhary and Manasvi Mishra. These two young girls, they created the flyers for the seminar, which I'm sure tease some of you to come and attend this. We also thank Sujata Patnaik for the video advertisement. I would also like to thank Mrs. Anu Biswar for coordinating the seminar and guiding us throughout this process. Thank you. We'll be meeting again. This is now the end. Thanks.
Thank you.
Namaskar.